Hello, my name is Virgil, and this is Literally Books. Today I'm going to talk about The Man Who Melted by Jack Dann, and this was a great book. But this isn't exactly going to be a review. So, yeah, this was a good book. Jack Dann wrote this book. I think this is from the 80s. This is going to be very casual, by the way. If you're not digging this, then I'm sorry, because you're going to miss out, because this is going to be awesome. Whew, I have to edit this too. 1984. In 1984, The Man Who Melted. A really striking cover, right? So I discovered Jack Dann, and I don't have the book down here, by Waldrop. There was a Waldrop was the last name. I don't remember the first name. He was a science fiction writer, and there was a quote by Jack Van, choked by quote by Jack Dann on the back of that book. And it was a very striking quote, very high praise. And I got interested in Jack Dann. Is most noted for a lot of editing work that he's done. Not exactly most noted, but very well known for a lot of editing work that he's done. In fact, there's a pretty good chance if you've read science fiction and fantasy that you've read a anthology edited by Jack Dann. He also has won numerous awards, and we can get to all that in a second. So let me read you what this book says it's about inside the dust jacket, which I don't think I've ever read. So it's going to be a discovery for you and me. It says, The Man Who Melted by Jack Dann. The great scream, a telepathic tidal wave of fear, anger, and insanity not long before swept the earth, and those who have been spared from this siren call to annihilation hid behind self-imposed walls of isolation, for safety was no longer in numbers, but in avoiding large gatherings that might prove both catalyst and fuel for another, perhaps final, great scream. But for the subliminal artist Raymond Mantle, the hiding was over. The screamers had claimed his wife Josiane, his memories of their years together, and for a time, even his sanity. No matter how he tried to remember or to forget, everything through his paintings, always the hazy image of Josiane haunted him. Her voice whispered to him, calling him to find her, to join her, but only the screamers could provide the path to his wife. Through their telepathic link, he might yet make contact with her, or he might be dragged down into the dark and silver sea of their madness. This was a really strange book. Kind of hard to sum up, because the screamers, I think, aren't, maybe deliberately so, never quite a clear image to me. I'm not quite certain how they interact with the world. You get the sense that they're like huddled in the corners of like the cities and everything everywhere, and in the slums, so to speak. But that they could be anywhere. They could be at a gambling den. They could be on the city streets during a parade. Anywhere where large groups of people gather, there could be like a screamer attack. It's really unusual. There's lots and lots and lots of things that are given in here that are super bizarre. There's a whole group, like a whole, I guess you could say, like philosophy of people or a group of people that have like surgically implanted genitalia on their bodies, like on their arms and chest. Yeah, it's really strange. A lot of the taboos in this book are broken in this world, right? In this world, like all sorts of like really weird stuff is sort of normalized, and the book doesn't take that normalization as being like promoting it. I think what this book really does and what Jack Dann does a really great job of, is really delving into the human psyche and putting it on display. And that means that you have a lot of very uncomfortable and sort of not very fun things that are out in the open, so to speak. Sort of. I mean, that sort of is true. It makes it sound like really, really bad, which it isn't. But it does follow this main character of Raymond Mantle, and how he's looking for his wife, Josiane. And the book opens with him having contracted this man that's going to take him into the slums of the city. And they're going to go into this, what is essentially like a really sleazy brothel. in screamer territory, and this guy thinks that he's found Raymond's wife, and they go in there. I guess I'll give this away, just this little tidbit. This is the opening chapters, right? They go there, and it's not Josie Ann, but it's someone who has been like surgically altered to look very, very similar to her, almost identical. But this liaison that Raymond has hired can tell that she's got like the stitching, as it were. Like there's something along the edge of her jaw or something he notices. And he says, "Oh, right here. She's been. This is not her original face." There's some conversation that happens. Raymond reacts in a very strong way to the person who is sort of keeping this woman, right? Because she's drugged up and like obviously has been beaten. He has a very strong reaction to this guy and hits him. And then this sort of guy that he's hired sort of tries to smooth things over, but then it's like now Raymond's like, you have to buy this woman, right? You really, if you hadn't done that, maybe you would have got out, but you're buying this woman, right? Or else these guys are going to kill us. So he has to buy this woman, and they're trying to get her out of the city. And then the guide is like, oh, there's he can like tell, he can like smell that there's going to be like a screamer attack. And so he's like, we have to leave this woman behind. She can barely walk. She isn't really aware of what's going on. And Raymond doesn't want to do it. So this guy shoots this woman and kills her. And then Raymond ends up killing that guy. And then there's a screamer attack, and he kind of forgets a little bit something, and he gets out of the city. And that's the opening chapter. And the book alternates between going through things like that, like very graphic scenes, right? Not like, I say the word graphic, and I sometimes worry when I say that. People are like, oh, really graphic? Like not to like the nth degree graphic. And then you get these longer discussions of these characters sort of musing on like their psychology or dealing with each other and dealing with past history and their memories, because Raymond can't remember Josie Ann. He has these memories of like her being his wife and all this other stuff, but not really remember. But all these memories he has of his past, like Josie Ann has been like erased from them, like almost like blurred out in all these memories. So he can remember everything that he did. He can remember whole trips and vacations he took, except for her and anything he did with her. And he's obsessed almost to a bad point with finding her, not even certain if she's still alive. And then you have his friend who is sort of like estranged from his wife, and he's sort of, he seems to be a bad influence. And they have this woman who's in love with Raymond, who wants to help him, but also wants him to like love her instead, or maybe it too. The second thing that really happens in the novel is Raymond's going to attend a plug-in ceremony, which is someone who's going to die is going to sort of like let everyone plug into their mind psychically, and experience that, and experience this sort of new afterlife that exists now because of this psychic awakening that's happening because of the screamers. And again, this is where I say I'm not really certain what the screamers are. That's okay. I think it's okay. It's vague. It's vague what this whole afterlife thing is. This other existence that happens that these screamers are in, and Raymond isn't certain if his wife is dead or not, and he's hoping to learn that through this sort of other reality. That is not a digital reality, by the way, right? That makes it sound like it's not, this isn't like a cyberspace or anything. And if that seems a little confused in the way I presented it, well, it is a little confusing. But I really like this novel. It is kind of a tough sell because it takes such a long and unflinching look at the human psyche, right? Like I said, there's a lot of taboo stuff on display here. I'll give you one that's really easy that happens. Honestly, most of the characters at some point say something that it's like very shocking, right, about themselves. And one that you learn about Raymond very early is that Josie Ann is also his sister, and that's not taboo in the future. Yeah, it's weird, and I this is why this book is a little tough to recommend. But I really think that it's really interesting. And that kind of gets me into the larger discussion about this book and about about what this book can do that I think most books can't. Or I should say the kind of book that it is, what it can do. This allows him to get deeper into the psyche of a person in a way that you and I would accept more readily than if he had just used fiction. When he dives really deep into the sort of inner workings of someone's head, and what they're thinking and thinking about themselves and thinking about their relationship with this other person, in fiction, I feel as though you might at first reject those statements or conclusions. But here in speculative fiction, I think because we've already suspended our disbelief somewhat. Should I talk about suspension of disbelief? Maybe. We've already suspended our disbelief somewhat, and this book, since that door, that window is open, so to speak, can take us outside of that and do things and show us things that are true that regular fiction would really struggle to do. That's why I think this book needs to be speculative fiction. That's why I think this book needs to be what it is, because if it were just fiction, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work as well. It would be long and meandering and sort of, and whatever, it would dwell too much on a certain subject to make sure that we understand it, maybe. At least that's my opinion. There's a great truth in it because it's speculative. And I think that in thinking about that, I find that to be more and more true the more I think about it. The more surreal, the more bizarre fiction can get, the more truth it can show us. And the more we are not only shown truth, but the more accepting we are of that truth. And I think it's a really interesting idea. It's not an easy recommendation because it's not a fun, happy-go-lucky look at the future. There's definitely some downtime here, and some longer discussions, and sort of like, I don't know, sort of like emotional, like conversations and psychological conversations these characters have, that remind me of something. Honestly, a really big comparison for this would be like Philip K. Dick, right? I think that if somebody who's read Philip K. Dick, maybe read some of his slower stuff and appreciated his ideas, maybe even if there wasn't a lot of action going on, and there's a bit of that in here. It's a bit of similarity between Philip K. Dick and Jack Dan. And in fact, I think if you like Philip K. Dick, you're probably like Jack Dan. Let me just talk about, though, suspension of disbelief, because maybe I worry that people don't understand what that is or know what I mean. Not that I know everything. So when you read a piece of fiction, the reason that we can read science fiction, for example, and know that, like, listen, like, you can't have laser swords. Like, that isn't how that works. Like, it doesn't work that way, right? It just doesn't. What would keep the beam? How do you stop it? How do you stop it and only make it go out so far? You can't, right? That isn't how that works. We suspend our disbelief. We say, okay, I know that that's not true, but in the context of this work, I'm going to believe that it is possible. You suspend the part of your mind that's looking at that work of fiction and saying, this can't happen, and saying, well, we're going to accept that for the context of this novel, story, whatever, that it can happen, and I'm not going to be upset about it. I'm not going to be annoyed with it. And it's the writer's job to make sure that they do things to keep that suspension of disbelief intact. When it doesn't work is when there's too many, when there's too much of it. When you're asked too much, you're asked to believe that this person would act in a completely nonsensical way. Usually I find that that's what breaks me, is when people don't act correctly, right? Or especially, one really key thing, I guess, is dialogue. When dialogue doesn't sound right, when people don't talk to each other like a human would talk, that makes it very difficult for me to read something. Or when people just act nonsensically, right? Like, so if you've ever watched a horror movie and you get annoyed with the girl keeps tripping and falling down and can't get up and can't seem to run, right? Even though this guy's walking and there's no reason, but she just can't do it. Like, that's like where you're kind of like getting frustrated with the movie and annoyed. Like, that's where your suspension of disbelief is starting to break down, right? So I think because we're able to suspend our disbelief in a work of speculative fiction like this book, The Man Who Melted, that Jack Dan can take us deeper into our psyche, and we're allowing him to look at these things that are a little unpleasant. There's all kinds of weird, like I said, taboo stuff in here. Organ gambling is a thing. Unaliving, I think is what people say. Unaliving yourself is a legal thing. And there's this, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, but there's this thing that happens near the end of the book that I was just like, I thought was so interesting. It was so good. I kind of wish that the book's ending had aligned a little bit better with it, but that's okay. So I'll give that away. No, I'm not giving away a huge plot thing necessarily. The Titanic had been pulled up from the ocean at some point and sort of like turned into like a hotel or something. And it's not making money anymore. So they fix it up to actually sail again, and they put it out to the ocean with the intent of completely recreating the original event of the sinking of the Titanic. And you can book passage on this ship and go down with the ship if you want to. Although if you don't, then you can sort of book your ticket in a way so that you can be a survivor. And the characters go on this voyage of the Titanic, and it was honestly, I was like, wow, this is so interesting. Like before Cameron's Titanic, right? Did James Cameron steal his idea from this novel? I don't think so, but I just loved it. I think it's really worth checking out. I really want to read more of Jack Dann's writing. He won all sorts of awards for various fiction that he wrote. This book, I don't know that it won an award, but it was definitely nominated for an award, and he's written some other stuff that's really of high praise and done some really amazing anthology collections, right? Some very notable one. I think his anthology of Australian fiction was the first work of Australian fiction to win the World Fantasy Award. He and his wife at the time, who I think was Joanne, not Webb. I don't know if it was the last name was Webb or was. Ooh, I bet you I got it written down though. You want to stick around for a second? I can tell you. Oh, yeah. Oh, here we go. Click on this button. Look at that. There we go. Click the button. You can't see it, but I can. And I am going to go down to here. Use the sound. That's not even me. That's the sound the computer makes when I do this. Strange, isn't it? Seems like it comes right at me. Oh, here we are. We're in this thing. It was Janine Webb, and he won the World Fantasy Award for Dreaming Down Under, the first work of Australian fiction to win the World Fantasy Award. He actually worked with Grania Davis in publishing a collection of Avram Davidson's Jewish stories, which I think is really interesting. And he also published a book that's all about like just that brought Jewish writers of science fiction and fantasy, kind of like gave them their dues in a sense, like kind of presented them, and these writers have been sort of forgotten. Just great stuff. I'm definitely interested in reading more Jack Dann. This was a good book. I hate saying that thing like this is a hard recommendation. I hate saying stuff like that because I feel like it chases people away, and I don't want you to get chased away from this book. I think it can do things because of the kind of book that it is that other books can't do, and I like that. That's one of the things I like about speculative fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, is it lets us do these things in overt ways that just can't be done in regular fiction. This is what we've been doing since the beginning, isn't it? I mean, isn't that what myths are, right? We're telling these fantastical stories to explain some deeper truth or understanding of a culture. I mean, isn't that what we're doing? Isn't that what we do every day, right? I don't know. Thanks very much for watching. Like and subscribe help. There's a support link. Maybe I'll do something more with that support link at some point. But right now, it's just a support link. If you're interested, I do have some fun and exciting things happening that are not completely ironed out yet, so I can't really announce any of that stuff. But I will say that I did get to do 2 episodes with Bob from Wheel of Genre on the Avram Davidson podcast universe. I'll post links to those when they go live. They're not out yet, right? We recorded 2 episodes, which was just an absolute blast. I mean, it was such a damn good time. So I'm looking forward to seeing those, right? I don't have to edit them, which is like super cool. I don't think Bob edits them either, so I don't even know. This is like the coolest thing. He was like, this is like, oh man. Hey, what are you talking about? I don't even know what I'm talking about. Thank you very much. I already said this stuff about liking and subscribing. Now I'm supposed to say a humorous thing and make you laugh. Books are good. Read those books. If you do, you can stop the crooks. Yeah. Words of wisdom. Words of wisdom. Well, I'm going to stop this video now because I don't think I can follow that one. That adage cannot be followed up. Is that an adage? Or is it an audit? No. Stop.